The topic is inclusive Africa, and there's so much to be said about this. Let's start with the fact that we still have much work to do to get more internet available to people in Africa. And of course, like every other part of the world, the access to internet varies pretty dramatically from place to place. It's often less accessible and less available in rural parts of the country. But even in urban populations, you'll find places where internet service is not very useful or not available or unaffordable or some other deficiency. So there's plenty of work to be done to find business models and incentives that will help the private sector invest in more internet capacity. That requires governments to think their way through what incentives they can offer to the private sector for both collaborative and competitive reasons. So ideally what would happen, I think, is that the private sector would find increasing numbers of motivations for making investment in basic internet infrastructure. Of course, this also implies that energy is available, electricity in particular, since none of the computers ever run on anything other than electrons, as far as I can tell. There's more to access than just physical facilities, though. People have to know what's available, what applications there are. They need to be able to read and write, or at least speak the languages that the system is capable of supporting. And it gets even more complicated for people with disabilities, of which there is a fair percentage in the African continent, just as there is in the rest of the world. Coping with a disability, for example, visual impairment or hearing impairment or a motor impairment, is not easy, especially if the programmers who designed the interfaces to their applications haven't understood or taken into account the kinds of accommodations that are needed. So there's, as I say, plenty of room here for improvement. When the internet was first being designed, it was intended to be used for the U.S. Defense Department's command and control communication system. But we very quickly realized that it had social implications. Email distribution lists were an early phenomenon. And then later, as time went on and as more capacity was available, much more elaborate applications came along, streaming audio and video and real-time interactions and games of various kinds. And also the ability to augment human capacity with a capability that no human could possibly undertake. For example, in the case of Google, figuring out how to download, index, and then search the entire World Wide Web, something no collection of human beings, even 7 billion of them, could reasonably undertake. And so the ability to use computer power to augment human capability was very much a part of Internet's story. And it was aided dramatically by the arrival of the World Wide Web in 1993, as Tim Berners-Lee turns this into reality, and the Netscape Communications Company turns it into a product. And oh, by the way, it goes public in 1995 and sends the stock through the roof, and the dot boom is on. So we have seen over the period of roughly 50 years since the conception of the Internet, and almost 40 years since its operation, starting in 1983, that it has evolved in dramatic ways. It has expanded by factors of 1 million or even 10 million in various dimensions. It's pretty astonishing that any design could expand by that those orders of magnitude. And we keep discovering new applications. Of course, we've also discovered that some people use this powerful system to harm other people, or to send phishing attacks or spam or denial of service attacks or malware. There's quite a long list of harmful behaviors. And now we have to figure out how to cope with that. And you will too, just as the rest of us have in other parts of the world. So the important message, I think, for you is that the Internet, which continues to evolve, is an incredibly powerful and constructive tool. You can build almost anything you can figure out how to program. But at the same time, we have to recognize that there are people with the diverse and not necessarily very friendly intent. and we have to hold them accountable for that bad behavior, which means we have to identify who they are, which means that absolute anonymity is not your friend here. We have to be able to penetrate the veil of pseudonymity at need, but only under suitable circumstances, given that privacy, of course, is a very important human right. Well, I could go on, but I think you have work to do, and so do I. So let me simply encourage you, first of all, to share what you have learned and share your aspirations with each other. You never know who might have an idea that could help you get to where you want to go. I can confirm to you one really important life lesson. If you want to do something really big, like the internet, get some help, especially from people who are even smarter than you are. I have certainly benefited from that life lesson over the past 50 years, and I hope you will too. So again, I'm sorry I can't be there in person, but we'll see each other on the net.